Most people think manifestation is about pulling something closer. But what if the real secret isn't attraction at all? What if the future you're chasing is simply waiting for you to remember it? You were never meant to hunt for what you desire. You were meant to recall what has always lived inside your inner archive. Here is where the mainstream teachings glitch. They build on the idea that something you want is floating somewhere beyond reach, and that from a place of longing, you must somehow lure it into your life. But in a quantum reality, there is no outside. There is only this vast field, folding and unfolding in endless expressions of now. So what if the future you seek isn't a treasure to be acquired, but a forgotten truth waiting to rise within you? Let me begin with a story. When Maya was 7, she would close her eyes and drift into a vision. She saw herself standing beneath warm lights, felt the hush of a crowd leaning into her words, and sensed a purpose so clear it vibrated through her bones. But no one around her believed in such inner knowing, so she learned to silence it. She grew older. She followed expectations. She worked, endured, survived. And every time she walked past an auditorium, something inside her tightened like an unanswered call. 15 years later, after a heartbreak that hollowed her and a burnout that left her trembling in a parking lot, she heard a whisper rising from a place she had buried. It's time to return to yourself. That night, she looked into her bathroom mirror and cried, not out of pain, but because she recognized the girl she abandoned. A week later, a friend dragged her to an open mic. 2 months after that, she stood on a small stage under the very lights she once imagined. The same atmosphere, the same pulse, the same sense of belonging she had seen as a child. She didn't attract that moment, she remembered it. And the field moved with her recognition, because that is the nature of this reality. In the quantum model, every expression of you already exists. Every path, every potential, every fulfilled desire. Time isn't a straight line, it's a living tapestry, a symphony of frequencies holding everything you've been and everything you can become. So you're not calling a future closer. You're stepping into the version of reality that already matches the code stamped inside your being. This is where the law of attraction misleads you. It assumes disconnection. It tells you that what you want is distant, when in truth, it has never been separate. Separation is only a dream your mind rehearsed for too long. And the instant you start remembering, deeply, viscerally, the field responds like a mirror that cannot lie. Let's weave in the science. In quantum superposition, a particle is a cloud of possibilities until an observer enters the scene. Then the cloud condenses into a single outcome. But what shapes that outcome is not how intensely you want it, but how clearly you perceive yourself. Your identity is the true observer. And that identity carries memories not only from the past you recall, but from futures you've already lived in the field. This is not imagination. This is architecture. Neuroscience shows that your brain doesn't distinguish between a lived memory and a vivid inner vision. To your nervous system, what you feel fully becomes real. And in the quantum field, a frequency match becomes activated. Your biology and the field are in constant conversation. So when you remember a future self with enough emotional coherence, you're not fantasizing, you're aligning. You're not pulling something toward you. You're shifting into a version of you where it already exists. But here's the paradox that traps most people. They visualize from the vibration of absence. They try to feel abundant while their energy whispers that they are lacking, and the field, always honest, reflects the truth of their vibration, not the script of their wishes. So the harder they try to attract, the more they amplify the fact that they don't yet believe. Meanwhile, those who release the chase, those who relax into remembrance, manifest with a strange ease. They're not pleading, they're not forcing, they're not wrestling with timelines. They're simply tuning themselves to a melody they've known long before they arrived here and letting it carry them home. Neville Goddard called this living from the end. But even that is only part of the truth. Because when you live from the end, you're not pretending something already happened. You're letting the identity who has lived it rise through your body and take the steering wheel. You become memory in motion. Think of your future self like a beacon sending out a steady signal across dimensions. That signal is made of emotion, identity, resonance. But your present self is often clogged with doubt, noise, old stories, habitual fear, When you soften into presence, when breath clears the static and you drop into full body awareness, you suddenly catch the signal. It feels like recognition, like déjà vu, like stepping into a room you've never been in, yet somehow remember. And in that moment, you're no longer chasing your future, you're inhabiting it. This is why some people manifest effortlessly. They don't force coherence. They let the memory of their wholeness speak louder than the narrative of separation. And once that memory stabilizes, the field responds as if it has no other option. So ask yourself gently, what if the thing you desire is actually a moment your soul already lived? What if your dreams, your visions, your chills and instincts aren't imagination, but fragments from another timeline, calling you back to alignment? And what if the only missing piece is your willingness to remember without waiting for permission? In the next chapter, we'll journey deeper into the quantum field to explore how your future is not a distant possibility, but a stored imprint accessible not by effort, but by resonance. You don't have to attract what belongs to you. You only have to remember the self you abandoned along the way. You were taught that memory is something behind you, a collection of past events stored in the mind. But what if memory doesn't follow a straight path at all? What if memory is untouched by time? What if the future you glimpse in quiet moments is not a fantasy you must construct, but a recollection waiting for you to open it? This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's the architecture of the quantum world. In this model, time doesn't stretch forward like a line. It gathers like a field where every moment past, present, and unborn rests side by side as pure possibility. And the version of you inhabiting each of those possibilities is already woven into the structure of the field. You are not counting days until a future arrives. You are adjusting your inner state to meet a self who already exists beyond the illusion of sequence. Let's look deeper. Research from thinkers like Dr. Amit Goswami points to a truth that reshapes everything you know about manifestation. The observer does more than witness reality. The observer selects from the ocean of potential and solidifies one pathway into form. But what if the observer is not only the you who breathes in this moment? What if a future version of you is also choosing, sending impressions backward through the field, so that the next chapter of your life becomes unavoidable? We're taught that remembering is passive, but in the field, remembering creates form. When you reconnect with the state of being that aligns with your most expansive identity, you pull that timeline into the present with the authority of resonance. Your future doesn't bloom from planning. It emerges through recognition. Imagine the quantum field as an endless archive filled with countless editions of you. Each version carries a different tone, a different pattern of emotion, a different path of becoming. Most people wander through this archive blindly, recycling familiar storylines or repeating borrowed scripts simply because they don't know anything else exists. But then something shifts. You pause. A dream lingers. An image returns without reason. A feeling rises that you can't explain. This isn't fantasy. It is a memory flickering open. And the moment you respond emotionally, the moment your inner world treats it as real, that timeline begins stitching itself into your present reality. This is where science and mysticism overlap. Some theories in quantum cognition suggest that memory may not live in the brain at all, but be accessed through the field by resonance. Rupert Sheldrake's work on morphic fields proposes that once a pattern exists, other systems can recall it through non-local connection, meaning the memory of your future may be held not in your mind, but in the energy surrounding you, waiting for your coherence to unlock it. And how do you unlock it? Not through strain, not through hopeful wishing, but by matching its tone. Emotion is the portal. This is why the memories you never forget are the ones that moved your body first. And when you glimpse a future self, your body often reacts before your thoughts catch up. Your breath pauses, your chest warms or tightens, your skin tingles. These are not the signals of imagination. They are your physiology responding to something the field already recognizes as true. But this invites a deeper question. If the future is already present in the field, why can't everyone remember it? Because the field does not reward wanting, it responds to clarity. And most people move through life carrying dense layers of old emotion, unhealed memory, mental repetition, and identities they have long outgrown. Their system is too saturated with yesterday to receive what belongs to their tomorrow. To remember the future, you have to create spaciousness inside yourself. Room for a new signal to land. Room for uncertainty to feel safe. Room for identity to loosen its grip so a more aligned version of you can step forward. This is why breakthroughs often arise in stillness, in meditation, in the moments when you finally stop pushing. Not because you're performing magic, but because you're entering coherence. And coherence is the universal key that unlocks memory across time. Think of your energy like a tuning device. Every timeline, every outcome, every version of you broadcasts on a different frequency. If you're tuned to chaos, you won't hear the signal of fulfillment. If you're locked into fear, the guidance of your higher self becomes faint. But when you shift your emotional state, your mental patterns, your vibrational field, you change what you're able to remember. You don't have to invent your vision, you only need to stop muffling it. The Buddhists call this suchness the art of seeing without distortion. Neuroscience calls it neuroception, the body's ability to sense truth before the mind analyzes it. In manifestation, we call it alignment. All these perspectives point to one principle. The moment you stop fighting the present, the future reveals itself, so here is the invitation. Stop trying to build a future from scratch. Start remembering the one that has already been imprinted in your soul. The more you remember, the more magnetic you become. Not because you push reality into shape, but because you harmonize with a timeline that has been waiting for your recognition. This is the shift from effort to access, from forcing to flowing, from wishing to witnessing. Your future is not waiting for you to earn it, it is waiting for you to recall it into form. In the next chapter, we will explore how the brain reshapes itself to receive these memories, and why neuroplasticity becomes the bridge between who you think you are and who you are destined to become. You will see that accessing the future has far less to do with vision boards and far more to do with transforming the vessel through which the memory arrives. If your future is a memory, then your body is the receiver and your belief is the switch. A quiet revolution is stirring inside you. It doesn't arrive with spectacle. It doesn't demand attention. It unfolds between neurons, in the currents of your nervous system, in the subtle electricity of your mind. And yet it holds the power to collapse timelines, to awaken future memories, to embody the self who already knows what is possible. This revolution is called neuroplasticity. It may be the most underrated tool in quantum manifestation. Your brain is not a warehouse. It is not a fixed repository of facts, fears, and recollections. It is a living, responsive interface, constantly rewiring itself through your focus, your emotions, your intentions, and the environments you inhabit. Every thought you nurture, every feeling you honor, every belief you cultivate lays down neural pathways that eventually become default. And those defaults shape not just perception, but what you are able to recall, to recognize, to inhabit. The trap most people fall into is assuming memory is passive, that it happens to them without invitation. But memory is access granted by who you are being in this moment. Your identity is the key, and it is flexible. When you shift your identity, not theoretically, but embodied, fully felt, you unlock new dimensions of memory, intuition, and possibility. Your brain stops scanning for evidence of your past self and begins seeking data that aligns with the self you are becoming. Suddenly, you recall futures you never logically studied, but have always known in the deepest cells of your body. Let's bring biology into the picture. Your brain contains over 100 billion neurons, each forming thousands of potential connections. Every time you engage in new thoughts, emotions, and imagined experiences, different neural networks activate. And when these networks fire together repeatedly, they wire together, mapping new realities inside your nervous system. This is how the brain learns. This is how it remembers. It pieces together fragments of identity that had been scattered, suppressed, or dormant. That is why imagining a future can feel overwhelming at first. The circuitry doesn't yet exist to hold it as real. You are asking your system to run software it hasn't downloaded. But repetition, visualizing, feeling, speaking, emotionally anchoring that vision, shifts the neural hardware. You aren't preparing for a new reality. You are installing its memory. The power is astonishing. Each time you clearly imagine your future self, your brain records it as lived experience. Studies with elite athletes show mental rehearsal lights the same regions as physical performance. The brain cannot distinguish imagination from reality. When you rehearse your future vividly and consistently, you are remembering forward. You lay down new tracks of identity, and the field is listening. Most people stop too soon. They visualize for a few minutes, feel inspired briefly, then default back into old patterns. It is like installing a new app and then immersing the device in water. Neuroplasticity demands repetition. The field responds to coherence. Your future self requires stability. How do you hold a future memory? By embodying the state before the outcome. Not pretending, not faking, but fully training your body to feel the emotions of a self that has already lived that reality. Gratitude, certainty, calm, expansion. These are not rewards. They are tuning forks, signaling to your brain, this is safe, this is familiar, this is real. When the experience feels real long enough, your brain records it as memory. Manifestation is not repetition. It is recognition. The moment your system recognizes a new future as more familiar than the old past, the shift becomes irreversible. Dr. Joe Dispenza calls this firing and wiring. Every thought and feeling forms new neural maps, but the emotional signal determines their strength. Doubt weakens the connection. Gratitude and joy fortify it. The stronger the signal, the more stable the memory. You can rewire into a new reality, but you must feel it deeply, not just think it. This is how the brain begins to expect magic. This is how the body starts craving alignment. This is how the field begins to echo the signal of your becoming. When your inner landscape shifts, your perception of time bends. And when time bends, memory becomes nonlinear. You awaken knowing things that haven't yet unfolded. You feel emotions that don't match the present, but resonate perfectly with the life that is coming. Fleeting glimpses of a self you have not yet embodied appear with startling clarity, and suddenly you recognize something ancient within yourself. At this point, manifestation stops being about strategy. It becomes about familiarity. You are no longer constructing the new. You are stabilizing the timeless. You are remembering what your soul has already lived across countless dimensions, offered back to you now as recognition. The only obstacle is identity. If you continue to operate from doubt, from disbelief, from attachment to the old story, your brain will replay the same loop endlessly. But the moment you act from the knowing that it has already been done, your system aligns and the field responds. In the next chapter, we will explore how the act of remembering generates magnetic fields around you, fields that do more than anchor timelines. They draw confirmation through synchronicity. You will see why anchoring emotion before outcome is the key to inhabiting the version of yourself that no longer questions because it already knows. You are not simply rewiring your mind, you are reactivating access, awakening the memory of your future. There comes a moment when it stops being theory. When remembering your future shifts from concept to felt reality, it arrives quietly as stillness, as a profound inner click. Like something long lost has slid perfectly back into place. In that instant, your entire field transforms. This is the energy of remembering, not of the past, but of the self who has already walked the life you are stepping into. The self who has healed, loved, and faced fear. The version of you that is no longer striving, but safe enough to simply be. Most people don't understand this. Remembering is not passive. It is a frequency, a broadcast, a vibrational signature so precise that it reconfigures your field in real time, anchoring a new timeline into the present. Here's how it works. When you remember a future self, you activate the emotional signature of that timeline. Emotion is the carrier wave. It binds intention to reality. Each future self broadcasts on a unique frequency, a blend of thought, feeling, and bodily state. If you feel it fully and consistently without needing external proof, you are already transmitting that signal into the quantum field, and the field, governed by resonance, reflects it back. This is not metaphysics. This is energetic mechanics. Most teachings simplify it to feel good, but it's not about pleasure, it's about precision. Emotion is information, a code. When your inner state matches the emotional tone of your desired timeline, that timeline begins to collapse into your present. You are not pulling it in. You are simply removing the resistance that kept it out. This is how new realities anchor. Not through repetition, not through effort, but through embodied resonance. Consider Alina's story. She had journaled, visualized, and affirmed her soul's calling for months, yet life felt stuck. Work drained her, relationships felt empty, anxiety lingered. Then during meditation, she stopped striving to feel good. She simply asked, "What does it feel like to be the me who has already walked through this?" A wave of calm passed through her chest. Her breath softened. Tears came, not of sadness, but of recognition. She wasn't imagining a better life. She was remembering a frequency already alive within her. From that day forward, everything began to shift. Not because she tried harder, but because her field had changed, her signal had changed. She stopped chasing and began stabilizing. Visualization became a natural extension, not a constant effort. She became the memory, and the universe responded. This is how timelines anchor. A new reality takes hold when you normalize its energy within your system. When the extraordinary feels ordinary, when magic becomes your baseline, and when every moment of coherence outweighs the old story, the field begins to reconfigure around you. Gratitude is often misunderstood. It is not merely a spiritual virtue, it is a frequency anchor. Feeling grateful for something before it materializes, allowing your nervous system to accept it as already real, creates a loop in the field. That loop signals, this frequency is familiar. This is my home now. The field, exquisitely responsive, begins to rearrange reality around your signal. This is how timelines collapse. This is how delays dissolve. Not when the external world changes, but when your inner frequency stops waiting. There is another portal, certainty. When you remember your future with such clarity that if disappears and only when remains, your body relaxes, your field expands, your thoughts declutter, and you open a quantum vacuum, a space for higher timelines to flow in. Surrender is not giving up, it is remembering that the outcome has already been recorded. The shadow is sampling. Many dip into this frequency briefly and return to old baselines, doubt, striving, waiting. The field does not anchor to samples, it anchors to stability. Stability is not perfection. It is returning to your frequency faster each time you wobble. It is saying, I don't need to attract this, I already remember it. I am the field, I am the signal. To root this truth, anchor it physically, declare it. I remember the version of me who already lived this. Not as a wish, but as a statement. Not for proof, but because your body knows, your breath shifts, your field responds. This is no longer about becoming, it is about allowing the memory to stabilize. Once the memory stabilizes, the timeline stabilizes you. Now we arrive at identity. Quantum identity is the art of becoming the version of you who already knows. Your identity is the gateway to every reality. You cannot access a new reality while embodying the old self. You cannot remember your future while loyal to the version that forgot. You cannot collapse timelines while asking permission to exist there. This is the unspoken truth at the heart of transformation. Identity is the lock. Frequency is the key. Identity is not who you are. It is the version of yourself your nervous system rehearses, the familiar patterns of thought, emotion, and belief it accepts as me. The field does not mirror your wishes. It mirrors your identity. No affirmations, no vision boards, no ritual overrides the signal you broadcast unconsciously. You will keep recreating the same reality because the field is precise, obedient, and intelligent. It reflects what you are, not what you want. Here is the shift. Identity is fluid, fractal, programmable. Quantum identity is the deliberate, repeated choice to embody the version of you who already knows the future is complete. It is the conscious rehearsal of self, the tuning of every thought, emotion, and action to a reality already lived, so that remembering becomes effortless and the field has no choice but to respond. Not done as in waiting somewhere outside to arrive, but done as in fully lived, already felt, already remembered. When you step into that version, not as fantasy, but as frequency, you trigger what physicists might call observer collapse and mystics call embodiment. Either way, the outcome is the same. Reality shifts. Consider the lessons of the double-slit experiment. A wave of infinite possibilities collapses into a single outcome the moment it is observed. But rarely do we ask, who is observing? Which version of you is looking? If your wounded self observes, life collapses into repetition, survival, and limitation. If your awakened self observes, reality unfolds into expansion, peace, and synchronicity. If your quantum self observes, the one who already remembers the outcome, you collapse reality into design, not chance. Most shifts in life feel sudden or mysterious because people temporarily access this higher identity. But what if you made it permanent? What if you rehearse the emotional, energetic, and behavioral patterns of your future self so consistently that your nervous system no longer waits for proof and your body no longer asks permission? This is not pretending. This is entrainment. You entrain your system to a higher frequency. You entrain your perception to expect coherence. You entrain your behaviors to match what is already true in another dimension. The beauty of this is effort disappears. The version of you who already knows does not chase, does not force outcomes, does not panic in the in-between. They move from certainty, from recognition, as if they have already been there. This is the magnetic power of quantum identity. It removes friction. You are no longer climbing the mountain, you are the mountain itself. Every identity emits a predictable field. That field dictates what thoughts feel accessible, what emotions feel natural, which people enter your orbit, and what choices feel aligned. Shift your identity, and you transform your entire perceptual field. What once felt distant now appears obvious. Decisions that once felt heavy now flow with ease. Insights, confirmations, and nudges arrive as if by design. Not because reality has changed, but because the observer has. It is like swapping lenses on a camera. Same world, new clarity, new story. The shift happens the moment you decide to remember who you truly are. Not the self you perform to be accepted, not the self you built to survive, but the self beyond time. The one who no longer questions possibility because they are already on the far side of done. This is what triggers a timeline jump. Not goals, not strategies, not manifestation techniques, but the identity shift that declares, I am not ask, I am it. When you stabilize that identity, emotionally, neurologically, vibrationally, you become unrecognizable to your past self. The field recalibrates, life begins to mirror your new frequency. People, opportunities, synchronicities, all respond. Opportunities begin to move toward you without effort. The internal noise fades, a deeper knowing rises, and none of this is magic. It is physics made personal. So let's ground it. Start with a simple question. What does your future self no longer believe? Then ask, what does that self feel on an ordinary day? And finally, can you feel even a fragment of that now without waiting for circumstances to shift? Every time you answer with embodiment rather than imagination, you strengthen the new identity. Every time you refuse an old reaction and choose a higher frequency, you reinforce the signal. This journey is not about perfection, it is about coherence. You do not need to become your future self every moment. You only need to become undeniable to yourself, because once you remember who you are, reality remembers too. As we close this chapter, something becomes clear. You are never off track, never behind, never broken. You were not trying to remember your future. Your future was trying to remember you. And now that the interference has thinned, it can finally reach you. For years, you tried to reclaim yourself, to restore your purpose, to reassemble the version of you who once knew you were meant for more. But what if the remembering was happening in both directions? What if the self who has already lived it, already crossed the threshold, already witnessed the miracle, is the one pulling you back into alignment? This is not poetic metaphor. It is a multidimensional exchange. Nothing in the field is ever lost, only obscured. And when the fog lifts, the version of you who always knew begins to surface. You start noticing signs not because the universe just woke up, but because you did. You feel moments of recognition in experiences you have never lived because echoes of your future are reaching back toward you. A repeated number, a strange alignment, a conversation that rearranges your internal landscape. You are not being handed a new life. You are being returned to the one that has always been yours. Remembering is not retrieving lost information. It is dissolving the distortions that muted your signal, the doubts, the inherited identities, the timelines you adapted to but never belonged to. And the moment you release the idea that you are behind, even for a breath, a doorway opens. Your future self steps forward, not as an idea but as a current that draws you into who you already became. This is the pivot point. You are no longer walking toward your future. You are being carried by it, not because you earned it, but because you matched it. This is where seeking stops, where proving ends, where the question, "Am I doing it right?" loses its meaning. You begin breathing as if the air itself is more spacious. You move as if the ground beneath you recognizes your steps. You speak not from hope, but from memory. This is the soul's remembering, not of tasks or strategies, but of essence. The you beneath the masks, the you beneath the survival roles, the you that remained untouched even when everything else shifted. And now that version is stabilizing. The field responds faster, the timeline anchors. The question is no longer, will I get there? The real question is, can I stay here long enough for this memory to reshape what you call reality? Coherence is not a single moment. It is a choice made repeatedly until it becomes identity. And from that identity, everything transforms. Your presence shifts. Your voice deepens. People sense something in you they cannot name. Not charm, not performance, truth. A frequency the field recognizes as original. You are not manifesting anymore. You are stabilizing a memory so ancient and so intrinsic that even your breath carries its signature. That is the power that is the return. And it is not coming someday. It is here now. If you take nothing else from this entire journey, take this. You were never lost. You were simply layered. And each time you choose remembrance over reaction, alignment over effort, presence over performance, another veil dissolves and you step into the version of yourself that has always existed in the field. Complete, whole, unshakable, finally home.